I think we're ready to start our program. We're very, very excited to have the artist Arthur Lopez with us tonight. He'll be taking us through his gallery and studio spaces and giving us a sneak peek at his environment. And so we're very excited to have him here tonight. But without further ado, we're actually going to start with introduction from our founder, curator, Rebecca Hofberger. So please take it away.
Thank you so much, Mavette, and to Jasmine for putting together this program. And of course, to our sainted artist, Arthur Lopez, for letting us really honor you and champion you. We're all looking right now, if you haven't seen my very final show, Healing and the Art of Compassion and the Lack Thereof. Exhibition. It will be on up until the Sunday right before Labor Day. And it has been probably the most emotional show, and that's saying a lot because people laugh a lot at our museum and they're moved to tears as well. But this exhibition has been particularly moving. And I came across Arthur Lopez when the Folk Art Messenger featured a work very similar to the one in the center, a saint, but at a small scale on the cover. And I was smitten. I loved the luster of the blue that he gives with his marble dust to his paints. But I thought with an exhibition theme of healing and compassion and the role that physicians all over the world have been pressed into service. And before there was any vaccine or a known treatment modality, that how brave they were to come when it was not yet known how to totally defend ourselves. And in this exhibition, you'll see a model of a 4 centuries ago plague mask the doctors wore. And it was a leather kind of contraption that made you look like you had a bird's beak with herbs in the stuffed down into the bird-like mask covering your face and mouth beak. And the leather mask came up over the eyes with glass protection so that when people coughed 4 centuries ago with the Black Plague, that spittle wouldn't go into the doctor's eyes. And it was interesting that even the word quarantine came from the Italian word for 40, because back then they knew mask, distancing, and quarantine was the only thing you could do to help keep contagion down to the greatest minimum that people can effect by those actions. And in Venice, a port trade city, no sailor was permitted off of the ship until for 40 days duration, not one of the sailors evidenced any contagion at all. Then they were allowed to come off. So the idea of quarantine, whether 100 years from now, we're in the, like living like the Jetsons with jetpacks, et cetera. If a new pathogen is introduced for which we have no cure or prevention, what will happen is we will still have to go with mask, et cetera. So this holy work, I have to say, from Arthur, I asked Arthur, could you please give us a presentation of sometimes the doctors who are in America educated abroad who come here to practice and do so with great compassion. But above all, can we really give due to the people who make the healing possible by their cleaning? And if you look at the figure on the far left with the bleach, I have such deep respect for the cleaning crew everywhere, including at our own museum, because without that commitment, particularly in a hospital setting, no healing can really safely go on. And yet it is the janitorial or maintenance staff who, before there's any cure or treatment for a new pathogen, they have to, change the sheets, which make viral particles airborne. They have to clean up the things that human beings, you know, the title under this is "We Humans Are Messy," particularly when we're sick or injured. And often they're paid the absolute worst of anybody who works at a hospital. And yet without them, no real healing can be safely transmitted. And they also, because they're poorly paid, often they have to take, you know, public transportation to work or live in high density, again, during pandemic times. So these figures are not small, as shown here. It's hard to tell scale. We have them in our exhibition, and they you know, between 3.5 and 4 feet. And in record time, when I explained to Arthur what the exhibition was about and why these works were so important, he worked tirelessly. I mean, he had like 9 months to create these things. I don't know how you did it, actually. And it's just been the first thing people see when they come to the second floor main part of the exhibition. And to see the reaction from medical staff who feel so so respected and cherished through this installation, but just even little kids, etc. With all our hearts, everyone at the museum has really become smitten with you, because we can see the love that you put into everything that you do. So I can't wait to hear more from you. So again, thank you so much, dear Arthur.
Thank you. Well, it's my honor to be a part of this, really. You know, as Rebecca said, when she called me, it was, you know, I was just so taken by her and her spirit and what she was presenting to me, that there was no way that I could not be a part of this. And so, you know, the time frame was hard, but it was worth putting things aside and moving. You know, I had to call a few people up and say, hey, you know, this is going on. Would you mind if I move, you know, your commission or this over? And you know, gracefully everybody agreed and was okay with that. And that's what kind of really allowed me to free up that time so that I could really concentrate on these 3 figures for the exhibit. So it was really my pleasure and my honor to be able to be a part of this exhibit, and especially with everything that's going on, and you know, the lack of kind of compassion that some of these people were receiving during this time. It was just a little tiny bit that I could do to honor them in some sort of a way. So, you know, this exhibit did become very important. So thank you, and it is my honor to be a part of it. Again, I guess I'm going to start just with a really quick intro. Again, my name is Arthur Lopez. I am here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was born and raised here. I've been a contemporary Santero wood carver for about 23 years now. I started this 23 years ago. I was always into art. I always loved it as a child. I was sketching, drawing, doodling, everything that I could do, all the way throughout high school. You know, I was taking every drawing class, every art class that I could. I went to college and I decided, okay, in college, I want to be an artist. That's what I want to do. So I went to Eastern New Mexico University and I started studying fine art. But when I got there, the realization came to me that you can't make a living as an artist. What am I going to do? I can't do this. And so I quit that career and went into graphic design, which was a new field at the time. I started doing graphic design. I quit college at Eastern New Mexico and I went to a design school in Arizona, and I did graphic design, where I did mainly paste up and things. I graduated from there with an associate arts degree in computer graphic design with an associate's degree. Moved back to Santa Fe and I did graphic design for 9 years. I worked for a local real estate company. And then I moved to Albuquerque and I worked for another children's catalog company. And then from Albuquerque, I moved to Los Angeles and I worked for a large book company called Lakeshore by Learning. And they were the largest supplier of educational books for the country. And I was their graphics and color guy there for a while. And during that time of the 9 years that I was doing this, I never picked up a pencil or drew again after that. I just didn't, I guess I lost the passion, and all I was following was kind of my career and trying to make a living and make money, I guess is what it was, climb that corporate ladder and see what I could do. And, and I was doing good. I was the art director of a lot of these different companies, and it was great. And I was young and I was making really good money. And I had an old boss from Albuquerque call me up and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be the art director of this new catalog that Macy's is putting out called Macy's by Mail." And I thought, wow, what a great experience. I'm going to go to New York. I'd never been there before, and I'm going to be the art director of Macy's by Mail. So I ended up leaving my job in Los Angeles, and I was going to head over to New York. And during the transition, I stopped here in Santa Fe for about 2 weeks just to visit with family. My parents were kind of recently divorced, about a year, I guess. And so my parents were separated. The day I got here in Santa Fe, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He had throat cancer. He had to have an emergency tracheotomy. And it was just so crazy that, I didn't know what to do. You're sitting there, my dad is divorced. He didn't really have anyone to care for him other than myself and my sister. And I ended up turning down the job in New York so that I could help stay and care for my father. In between that time of caring for my father, he was 54 years old. He had a tracheotomy. He had to be in an old age care facility because he needed 24-hour care because of his tracheotomy and a lot of medication that he was on. So I turned down the job just so I could help, take him to his different appointments, things like that. But during that time, I ended up meeting my wife, Bernadette. My dad ended up passing away 3 months later, and I ended up having a refound passion to want to paint and draw again. And I decided to go to the local Spanish market that's held here in Santa Fe. It's the largest traditional Spanish market of New Mexico arts in the country. And it's held the last full weekend in July every year. And so I went down with Bernadette and I said, I want to learn how to make saints. I just had this feeling that that's what I wanted to do. So I wanted to go down there and learn how to paint retablos, which are two-dimensional paintings on boards. And while I was down there, I saw the three-dimensional sculptures called Bultos, or they're wooden carved sculptures, and then they're painted. And although I had never done any sort of sculpture or anything like that before, I thought, I think I could do that. That's something I could do. And so Bernadette and I took a little trip up to the mountains, the local Hyde Park, and I found a downed aspen. And with a hunting knife and a razor blade, I ended up carving my first piece. And it was a Virgin Mary. And it was just so weird that something clicked in my head and it made sense. And I had never done, like I said, sculpture before, but it made more sense to me than my drawings. My drawings were I always called just so bad that, it took a lot of work to do. And for whatever reason, these sculptures came more natural to me. And while I was doing this, I was going to every show that I could to learn how to do the traditional New Mexico Santo style. And so I was going into the museum archives at the International Folk Art Museum, and I met the curator there who took me down into the archives, and I was able to research a lot of the old Santeros and saints. I started learning how to make pigments on my own and how they were made back then. I went to every show, educated myself, and I started carving when I first painted Bulto. And during this time, Bernadette at the time was pregnant with our son. And when I started carving my first painted Bulto, she went into labor with our son. It was a crucifix. And, I feel like I got two gifts that day. I got my carving, my art career, and my son. And so that's how I always know how long I've been doing this. And after I started, it was only like my third or fourth piece. While I was in the archives, I talked to one of the curators there, and she happened to be putting on a exhibit on Santiago, or St. James, the patron saint. And she said, "I'd like to see what you're doing." And I said, "Okay." So I brought it to her, and she showed it to her. And they ended up purchasing it for their museum collection. And I was just blown away. I had only been carving maybe like 4 months at the time. And I ended up entering the local Spanish market. It is a juried art show. And I got in on my first try. And all this stuff just started happening, with my carvings and the saints that I was making, that things after, you know, the devastation of what happened with my dad started to make more sense to me. It was like, now I know why that happened to my dad. Without that happening, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So it was a really, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but just really enlightening for me. And I look back at that everything happens for reasons that are bad. And, you know, I didn't know what was happening then and thought, you know, I'm being punished with this kind of thing. But now I look back at it and it was a gift. You know, my dad's death ended up being a gift for me because it woke me up and enlightened me. Because when my dad was alive, he used to tell me a lot of times, you need to be doing your artwork more. You need to be doing this kind of thing. And I would just be like, you don't know what you're talking about, Dad. You know, I'm making money, I'm making a living, you know, all this kind of stuff. And after he passed away, that passion came back. And, you know, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So it's really touching and emotional for that. But so that's kind of my story on how I got started. Now I'm going to flip the camera around so that you guys can see my studio. I just saw the little thing pop up. The type of sculpture that we do in New Mexico, I would be called, although I call myself just a wood carver or wood sculptor, the term for it is Santero in New Mexico, which is a saint maker. The sculpture itself is referred to as a Bulto, which is a three-dimensional carving of wood that's either painted or unpainted. And then there's a two-dimensional painting of a saint on a wood panel that's referred to as a Retablo, and those are in New Mexico. And then Santos is a general term for both. And so when someone says, you know, is that a Santos? It's no, Santos is a general term for what both of the items are. I hope that answered your question, Ms. Papa. I'm going to go ahead and flip around the camera, and I'm just going to give you guys a quick description of how the process is and what I do. So, okay, that worked. Okay, so this is my studio. I'm just kind of gonna give you a quick little roundabout tour of it. It's kind of hard to see. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. There's where I was sitting. This is some of the wood that I use. And here is my table, my desk, some of the stuff that's here. So what ends up happening in the process that I use is each piece starts off with a block of wood. The block of wood, for instance, here, this would be my block of wood. I would sketch onto the wood, you know, do whatever design, and then I would rough out the piece to where I would come out with a form from that. And then I'm able to start carving with different, you know, gouges, knives, and tools like that as I'm gouging away and starting to carve into the wood as I carve, as you can see, some of it going into it. This piece right here that I'm working on is a commission piece. It's going to be a crucifix, and the crucifix itself is it's fashioned after a Graham Sutherland painting. So if you're familiar with Graham Sutherland, this is the painting that one of the paintings that he did of the crucifixion. And I kind of transformed it into, at one time, a retablo, a little contemporary one that was a graffitied retablo on here. And see, I felt it had like a little bit of a graffiti style. Well, this piece had sold, the graffitied retablo piece, and I got a commission from someone who liked that piece but wanted it in three-dimensional form. So that is this crucifix here that I'm working on. So what I do is, as I'm working on the pieces, as you can see, this one has some of the blocked out images. I start to carve until the piece starts to take form, and I use all these different gouges, knives, and things like that. There's some of these things, I don't know if you can see that, but there's these micro gouges that are really small that I'm able to get into some of the eyes and the mouths and things like that. After the piece is finally carved, sanded, then it would be ready for gesso. This is an example right here of another piece that I'm working on. This is a 1967 Chevelle Super Sport. I do a lot of contemporary kind of pieces where I do vehicles, and people in them are saints in them, and they're saints that are cruising, down the road or whatever. But anyways, so as I'm working away, once the piece is ready and it's finally sanded, it's ready for gesso. And then from the gessoing, I take the piece and I go inside with it. So I'm just gonna kind of walk you guys through the house, through my yard, and then I'm gonna go into my indoor studio. I have to gesso everything and paint indoors. So, hopefully I'm not getting you guys too dizzy with some of this, but this is a little bit of
I do have a question. Is there a type of wood that you prefer to work in, or material that you prefer?
For most of the sculptures I use basswood. It holds a lot of good detail. And I use pine, sugar pine, because it has, for the bases mainly, just because it's a softer wood and it doesn't have as much pitch inside of it. So it's, after you gesso, you don't get that pitch. I'll just give you a little quick tour of, here's the outside of my studio, just to give you guys a little bit of that look. Some of the yard to the right. There's the sun in our face. And by the way, this is the house that I actually grew up in. It was only one story at the time. It's 2 stories now. When I moved back from Los Angeles, the house had been rented, and I asked my mom not to renew the lease so that I could move back in. But we're just gonna walk through the house, and then I'll come back here and I'll show you our collection and talk about that after I show you the process of the gessoing and some of the materials that I use for that. So, so hopefully I'm not getting you guys too dizzy as we walk through. Okay, so this is my office / studio, paint studio, gesso studio, and my wife Bernadette does jewelry, so it's also her area for jewelry. But let's see, I'm gonna try to face opposite of the sun so we don't have that big glare. Okay. So as I said, once the piece from outside has been carved, it then needs to be gessoed. The gesso is made by using rabbit hide glue. And what I do is I take the rabbit hide glue that's already crystallized, I rehydrate it overnight, and then I boil it. Once it's boiled to a certain temperature, I'm able to add the marble dust. This right here is a jar of some of the marble dust, as you can kind of see it in there. That gets added then to the boiled mixture of the rabbit hide and water mixture at its certain temperature. It's stirred in to a certain consistency, and then it's painted over the wood. So this right here, this is a small little pine panel, and it has the gesso already applied to it. Once the gesso is dried, it takes 24 to 48 hours for all the moisture to escape from the wood, and then you can re-gesso it, because a lot of times you might get cracks or bubbles or things like that, and then you re-gesso it. After you've gessoed it, that gives you your base for your pigment. The pigments that I use are a combination of natural and watercolor. And so some of the natural pigments that I use after it's ready are things like, are black walnut hulls. So these are black walnuts that I get from local trees, and I boil them. And I boil them so that you can loosen up some of the hull that's on the outside of them. And that gives me my brown pigments. And what I do then is I strain the moisture from after I've boiled them, strain the moisture, and I let them dry and flake off. And once they've flaked, the flakes that are dry, when I'm ready to use them, I have, sorry, just a little jar of flakes that come off. So these little flakes right here, I just reconstitute with water, and that gives me my pigments, or for my brown. I'm just going to show you, this is a recent commission that I just recently finished. It's St. Margaret, and I don't know if you can see, if I open up.
You can see the bottom. You can't really see the top.
Okay, so this is St. Margaret, and this color that's in here is that brown. It's a dark brown, and that's some of your black walnut pigment that is made with boiling the black walnut hulls. Some of the other colors that I use are cochineal. Cochineal is a little beetle. I don't know if you can see some of this. Go in the hand. So these little beetles are the female larvae off of a prickly pear cactus that are usually imported from Mexico. And then you take it in with the pestle mortis, you grind it all up, and you add a binder. And if you can see some of that deep red, that gives me my different colors of reds so that I can get some of these reds that are inside of her gown that are those deep reds. Let's see. So that's what I use for some of the reds. And then there's also some of the minerals. You can kind of see some of this right here. A lot of them are purchased. So this is yellow ochre, the natural ochre. And that's one of the mineral pigments that I use for some of my yellows. So for instance, her hair right here is yellow ochre. So all of this would be yellow ochre inside of that. And then, there's some other colors. Traditionally, you would do a varnish that was made out of pine sap. And so this right here is some of the pine sap that's collected from local pine trees. You add grain alcohol to it, and then it dilutes, and it turns into this right here, which is the traditional natural varnish. I no longer use that because over time, just as it's kind of ambered to this color, it'll amber and discolor your piece as well. Plus, it's just not a superior varnish. And now I use more commercial varnishes. But so once the piece is finally painted, then I seal it. Like I said, I seal the piece with a commercial varnish, and then I give it a final coat of beeswax. And so this piece right here, like I said, is a St. Margaret. And then she's also, I do gold leaf. So she's got gold leaf on the top of the crown. And here is her for her dragon. But
and when
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just we had a question in the audience as to why you use the marble powder. Is there something that the marble powder provides or in its finish that you prefer over regular gesso?
Mainly the marble dust that I use. I mean, in New Mexico, there's two types. They use either a marble dust or a gypsum. Gypsum is a little bit rougher. The marble dust is a little finer, and I prefer a finer take. But the reason that we use this instead of a commercial gesso is because since the colors are watercolor and water-based, the gesso actually, the watercolor will get absorbed into the gesso itself, so it kind of draws it in. I tend to use a heavier watercolor base than what you would see. That's why a lot of the pieces look somewhat like an acrylic almost, but it's because I use a heavier version of the watercolor. I use it very densely instead of very liquidy. Okay. And but you need that marble dust to kind of bring the adhere or bind to the color, I guess.
Got it. Yeah, and the colors are so vibrant in your pieces as well. So I guess that would explain that. So cool.
Didn't you tell me that the marble dust makes a sheen to the colors?
It does. It gives. That's what I really like about it. Is after I take this piece, for instance, and it's been then watercolored, and I'm able to, I give it a sanding before I even paint it, and it gives that really high polished look to it. So if you look here, it's kind of, I don't know if you can kind of see that in there, but it's very polished look, and that's because of the marble dust. So the more you polish it, the higher grade you're going to get. Whereas with a gypsum, you get almost like a very chalky kind of look, and I prefer that more fine finished look than, but it's kind of more of a personal preference than anything. And I'll just walk you back over to the house. I'll just show you some of Bernadette's work. This is her jewelry station, but we also do collaborative pieces. So like this piece right here is a wood carved piece that's been painted. And I don't know if you guys can see that, but so there's the wood. You can see some of the gesso on it. And then Bernadette does, this will be it's sterling silver, and she does sterling silver pendant that then will be placed inside of it. And it'll have the veil and a necklace that goes around it, and then certain stones around her flowers and things like that. But anyways, that's just another little
wow
cue into what we do.
Okay.
So does anybody have any questions on the process or what I do before I show you the studio?
Any questions so far? It's such a
I mean, our home collection.
you are
Okay.
out a little
So,
bit, Arthur. I'm wondering if now would be a good time to switch back to Wi-Fi since we're going to be primarily in the house.
okay, yeah, let me do that then. Let's see,
And
Wi-Fi.
folks to a chance to ask questions. But I mean, it's great to hear how you've done the research, right, for the traditional processes and how you come to your own process now. So it's an incredible process, if you will.
Since you're in your childhood home, are you living back in your old room, or what are you using your old bedroom for?
Was there a question?
Yes, I said, since you're in your childhood home again, do you sleep in your old room, or do you use it for another purpose?
No, you know, the crazy thing is this was our old home, and no, so well, I'll walk back through before I show you. So this is actually our living room. So as you walk in, we'd walk in through the door here, and you'd walk into the home this way. I'll show you, there's kind of the upstairs area, but the upstairs is now our living quarters. And our old rooms, the studio that I was in now and partial was my sister's bedroom. So this area right here is kind of my library kind of, there's my laptop, books library. Down there was a paint studio, but at the time we knocked in this wall, and that used to be a greenhouse for my mom. And so we converted it into now that studio area. So this was my sister's. And back in here in the hall, this little area has now become which was my bedroom, is now our workout room and our cat room. So this is where our cats and our workout area is. But coming back in. So does anybody have any questions about any of what I was doing? And then now I'll kind of go through and show you our collection and what we collect and all that kind of stuff.
No questions so far. Yeah, I think you explained the process beautifully. So, I mean, I'd love to hear more about your home. I mean, just looking at it right now, I'm fascinated by the decorations and the pieces on view.
Cool. Well, so like I said, we would walk through the door. This is how we enter the home, is you walk through the door. This is our living room, kitchen area, dining room, and to the right is our den area and stairs that go upstairs to our thing. So as well as creating art, we've always loved to collect art. So I love collecting and creating as much. I love the energy that's inside of art. So, you know, everything that's in our home, it's our own taste, what we like, we collect. You know, I call it folk to find. You know, anything that appeals to us, we buy. And I think that if it's good art, it just works together, in our opinion. And so a lot of the art in here is stuff that I've either collected from other artists, or some of it is still some of my art that's on display just because, you know, since I created, I have somewhere to hold on to it until it goes to its new home. But here is kind of, I'll come in. We collect contemporary ceramics. So we do have some contemporary ceramics. I know it's kind of dark in here. I don't know if you can kind of see, but we do have a little bit of different contemporary ceramics to some, you know, different fine painting. You can kind of see some of that. That's actually a mask that I made for my youngest son, whose birthday is in October, and he likes Dia de los Muertos things. So I made this mask for him. And then we also have some vintage traditional Mexican masks and things like that, as well as some of the contemporary art. Going up the walls are some of our contemporary ceramics. that we have, as well as some of our traditional New Mexican, Santos and pieces.
One in the audience wants to know, how often do you dust all of these pieces, Arthur?
we do it quite often. Like I said, we have 3 cats, a Chihuahua and a poodle, and so they keep it kind of nice and dusty. And the cool thing is we've never had anything broken by any of our cats. But so we collect everything from, like I said, contemporary ceramics, New Mexico pieces. We have I don't know if you can see up there, North Carolina pottery. There goes one of our cats now. To Mexican surrealist artists, folk art.
Yeah, is there a piece like in any of these rooms that really stand out or like have special meaning to you? Or I know all the works are probably special, but
A lot of them we've either, if we commission other artists or we just are attracted to. I've always been attracted to art, the figure. Some of these pieces I think a lot of people look at and it's kind of weird, but I call it creepy cool. I can really get into the weirdness of it, but more so the who made it and how it was made. And I look at the expressions and it's like, wow, that is so wild how the, how they've done the expressions, the figures, and what went into it. As an artist myself, I kind of really try to appreciate that. And I like a lot of the stories behind them, especially even some of the pottery, like this piece, finding out that it was traditionally they were made as grave markers to scare people away from grave robbers and things. And I was like, wow, that's a really cool story behind it. But, plus it's just a cool piece in my opinion. But so we just have a lot of different things that we're just attracted to in some sort of a way. We collect a lot of Native American art, and I like, some of the kasharis and kachinas, and I just like things that make me laugh. And like this piece here by Robert Albert, we commissioned him. He's a kashari, and I wanted an artist because, so I don't know if you can kind of see, but he's painting an image of himself, and he's doing this wild looking face. He's got paint just splattered everywhere on him, and it's just really wild stuff. But this piece right here is actually a collaboration that I did with a nationally known potter, Russell Sanchez, and he did the pottery and I did the painting on the sides, and I carved the top and the figure that's on top of that piece. So I have done collaborations with other artists outside of our own, with him being Native American and myself as a Hispanic artist. But just kind of giving you. And so, like I said, we have beadwork, we have, nationally known like Luis Tapia and nationally known beadworkers and Native Americans. Blackfeet, Jackie Larson Bread is a multi-award-winning artist at Indian Market. And the cool thing is, like with these here, they're all done in beads. I don't know if you can kind of see, is like,
yeah, if you can get as close as possible, that'd be great. I know some folks are trying to check out the detail. Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's just amazing the amount of beadwork that's involved in these pieces and these bags. And these are mini bolos that are hand carved by Hopi, a bolo maker. We've commissioned many bolo ties. Another beadwork bag by Ken Williams, who has, Ruth Gator has some of his pieces in her own that she's worn when she was alive. So just going through just a little bit of the collection. Again, more ceramic wild pieces. This is a kind of a weird piece in this corner called the Groom, and it was a strange story about the artist's brother and her became estranged. She had gone to his, well, when he was at her wedding, when she was getting married, the story goes, is he started a food fight at her wedding. And so she said, okay, well, whatever, they got in a fight, they got over it. Well, when he was getting married, he had this big formal wedding party and he had white carpets and for whatever reason, I guess had chocolate cake. And she happened to be eating a piece of cake and was in the carpeted area, and no one was around, but the cake fell on the floor. So she looked around and she rubbed the cake into the carpet to get back at her brother for the food fight he had started at hers. Well, someone found out about it, or he found out about it, and he went crazy. And so this is her brother, the groom, at the in a straitjacket because he went crazy at the wedding. But anyways, like you said, certain stories, they're just kind of funny. This piece here is another traditional New Mexico piece by a collaborative artist, Matt Duran, did the furniture. And inside, hopefully you could see inside of there somehow, let's see, is a bone carving of Christ. And it's a bone carving carved out of moose antler. And it was done with another artist, Arturo Montano. It's kind of hard to see, I guess, with it being dark in here, but
The detail in the beard and the facial hair, it was incredible.
so this is kind of our retablo wall. So as I was talking about retablos, this is what a retablo would be. It's a painted image on wood. And this is one of my older pieces, a Conquistadora piece, who is a patron of Santa Fe and the church. And then we have, again, some contemporary ceramics. Another one of my wooden sculptures, a Mater Dolorosa, who's Our Lady of Sorrows.
Wow, are those tears?
They are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, the lighting in here is so bad and it got overcast kind of fast.
How is it that you were able to put the detail? Is that painted detail on the dress aspect of it? Oh my gosh, what's underneath?
So as you look through the bottom in the slates is a anatomical, anatomical heart out of gold that's bleeding out. And the story is that Our Lady of Sorrows, she's a version of Mary, who was Jesus's mother, and she felt this pain in her heart. She had 7 swords that were the 7 sorrows of Jesus, and every time that something happened to him, she would feel that pain in her heart. So she is the patron kind of mothers and feeling that pain for their lost children. And as she would feel that pain in her heart, it's kind of said that she took the pain for all of the other mothers, even though they go through childbirth and feel that pain. That's really, how they're feeling their pain. She took the majority of the pain away from people. So the gold heart is her heart and the pain spilling out into the world kind of thing. So that's story on some of that. Let's see, what else do we got?
Arthur, there's a question from John Shields, our director of our volunteer docents, many of whom are with you tonight, right here with us all. And he had a question whether any of your works have ever been collected by the Museum of Contemporary Religious Art in Massachusetts.
No, they haven't.
Okay.
No, I had not heard of that. Wow.
Gotta make a connection there.
Exactly.
Thank you, John.
So more of our collection, we like vintage Talakipaki Mexican pottery. The Talakipaki pottery was pottery that was made in between the 30s up until the 70s as kind of tourist wear. And one of the ways that we got started collecting the pottery is that there's a chicken, let's see, the chicken right down here on the right, this one, was my grandmother's, and there was a turtle over here. The turtle was also my grandmother's. And so my mom ended up giving them to me, and that kind of started us off on our collection of collecting even more Talakipaki, because I have that addiction where you can't have just one thing, you have to have one of everything. So it's like, it wouldn't be a collection of just one piece. I kind of just missed what someone A couple
Sure,
people
yeah,
are saying.
questions to you. I was trying to figure out if maybe something we could ask at the end, but one of the questions was, Arthur, tell us how your art moved from the traditional northern New Mexico to how you moved to your non-traditional art now, or your contemporary view.
For me, it's kind of still in the tradition. I honor the traditions through creating the methods that were made without, so by utilizing the traditional methods of using rabbit hide glue and the marble dust and using the pigments and that kind of thing is honoring my tradition. But I try to kind of transcend and move forward with that tradition by doing the contemporary work. And one of the ways one of the things that happened is early on, I did this piece of it was the 12 apostles driving a hippie bus, and it was called Holy Rollers. And so they were driving this hippie bus, and Jesus was driving, and it had all the 12 apostles around it, and they all had their traditional iconography in it. And it was the first piece that my youngest son, Jeremiah, I caught him just staring at it and looking around it and asking all kinds of questions about it. Before, when I made something, he really didn't care. It was just a saint to him, or it was a crucifix with blood on it, which is scary. And so it kind of made sense to me that, you can still tell the same stories that each saint has, but do it in a modern, contemporary way that really appeals more to either the modern generation or more people in general. This is another piece of mine that has some of that contemporary feel, which is the Ascension of Mary. And so it's a wood carving, and what it is it has the hand of Jesus, and the Ascension of Mary is the time when Mary dies and she's lifted up into heaven. So mine is a balloon, and it has Jesus's hand, and it has barbed wire, the barbed wire representing the crown of thorns going through his hand. And it has the tattoos on it, and it has Madre for his mother on a Sacred Heart tattoo, Dios for his God, the Father on top of it on his knuckles. And the wire that was holding the balloon has been cut, and now it's a mylar wooden balloon that I carved. So it's a carved wooden piece, and I used actually car paint for this piece that has to give it kind of the sheen that it has on it, but it's lifting up, and now the balloon is floating off into the air as its Ascension of Mary for that piece. Let's see.
Another question that did come up was, a lot of your work, all of it has a lot to do with religion, iconography, and stories. Are you just kind of curious? Is that something that you practice or hold dear to you all, or something that you refer to a lot?
I was raised Catholic. I am Catholic. I consider myself to be more spiritual now. I was raised as by my grandmother, who I went to church with pretty much every day, because she was part of the Franciscan order, and I was an altar boy as I was younger. And for me now, I consider myself more spiritual and religious. I still pray and things, but I don't necessarily believe in a lot of the doctrine and what has happened with the church. Mainly I had done some political pieces about what had started to happen with Cardinal Law in Baltimore at the time, and the altar boy scandal that had first come out. And I did a piece of a priest confessing to an altar boy, and I titled the piece "Forgive Me, Son, for I have sinned," whereas traditionally in Catholic things, you go into confession, you say "Forgive me, Father," and it's so I did a role reversal and giving back the altar boys their power that had been taken by them. So so I do still practice in my own way, and I still consider myself Catholic and religious. This is a selfie piece that I made. It is I titled it "Me, My Selfie, and I." And what it is the Smithsonian each year, well, every 3 years, the Otwin Botcher, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, has a portrait competition from around the country. And so I had been threatening to do it. And back in, I think it was, if I have the dates correct, this was either 2016, I think, I decided to go ahead and enter the contest. And so my piece here that I titled "Me, My Selfie, and I," has, you know, my tattoos. It had my cell phone taking a selfie with a little selfie of myself. It made it as a semi-finalist, and it was sent to Washington to out of, you know, thousands of entries from around the country. It made it as a top 100. It gets sent to Washington. Once it's in Washington at the portrait gallery, then the jurors look over it and they select 50. Unfortunately, I didn't make it as a top 50, but I made it as a top 100 in the country with this piece. So I was really, you know, honored. And not to mention that Amy Sherrill was the winner that year. And she was able to choose Michelle Obama from that commission to do the painting of her. So I was in good company.
Yeah, that's incredible. And we did have this might be more of a personal question regarding your tattoos, but does your artwork inspire any of them? Just kind of curious.
It does actually. So I have my art arm and my, let's see, I don't know if you can kind of see, but so this is my art arm, and this has pieces that I've actually made and that I really liked, and that has pieces that are inspired by my artwork. My right arm is my family arm, and it has my kids' names and a Sacred Heart, and then it has me, my wife, and the kids done as Dia de los Muertos figures on the arm, and so it kind of does have that symbolism. Hopefully, I don't know, I guess I could go and finally get on just a regular desktop, unless anybody wants to see anything specific.
No, I mean, it's all been fascinating. I think folks just want to hear more about your work. If you had more examples, maybe you could show us on the desktop that you had available to show us. I think folks want to look more at your work.
Okay, let's walk in there and I'll see if I can switch over to the desktop then.
Sure thing.
Yes, there's in the chat box, I see Robert Horwitz and his wife were saying that they would love to show some of your pieces that they collect. Is that correct?
Oh,
Hey, Art.
Hi, Art.
Oh my
Hey,
God,
Arthur, how are you?
guys, I'm great. How are you doing?
We're
Good.
doing great. You didn't show enough of your artwork, so I said we'd love to show some of your artwork.
We just have a couple pieces that we put out on the table, so but there's more if anybody wants
Yeah.
to see.
Sure, we can take a quick look. Yeah, don't mind flipping the camera, and then I'll spotlight so everyone can see.
This is not a great way to show Arthur's work, but I don't know. Can everybody see this?
You can see it, yeah.
Um,
Moped. The figure's on a moped. Oh, look at the dog.
This is a Vespa scooter, and this is St. Francis and the Wolf of Gubbio in the scooter.
Frosty, which is Frosty.
And this was Frosty, our husky. And after doing this, Arthur said he would never do a real dog again because it was a lot harder than making a real person.
Yeah.
And then this is one of our favorites. This is Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. It's a very famous painting. And this is our golden retriever and our husky. And Arthur knew them both well, and he captured them perfectly. Our golden retriever was just like Diego, very calm, and our husky was just like Frida. She had a monobrow, and she was the boss of the family. So, but
there are more.
There are more. Actually, we did want to show you one. I'm sorry, we're not really easily prepared to do this, but.
Oh yeah, this is something he didn't tell you.
Yeah, Arthur.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Arthur didn't mention, and it's just a little hard to do, that he was the poster boy for the 2005 Spanish market, and this is a St. George that he did.
Wow.
But this is really our favorite. This is a frame Arthur did for the page that Gennady Spirin, who's a Russian artist, did. And this is a three-dimensional frame with lilies that Arthur did for us. So just a quick view of how versatile he is. I mean, some is very traditional. Some of the ones he did for us were very personal, but we do have to say we miss you and Bernadette, Art, but we love to have the artwork and it reminds us. So and we have more if people want to see that, but I just didn't think you were going to show enough of your own work. So go ahead. You go ahead and do your thing.
No, thank you guys. I really miss seeing you guys all the time. It's great seeing you at least here. You know, it's been so long.
Just a strange, synchronistic fact. We feature 2 life-size wolves with quartz crystal toenails made by Johanna Burke and St. Francis in the story of the wolf in the Compassion show of the wolf and the encounter that he had for the townspeople of Gubbio, the transformational.
Funny.
Yeah,
Oh,
that is-
that's
So
interesting.
really something. So thank you both so much for, having such wonderful eyes and heart to have realized, to have cherished, Arthur's work and to have collected such great things and to be dog lovers. I'm a big dog lover. I know Mama is as well, Uh, right.
Well,
Thank
Arthur,
you.
you're a cat lover now.
Yeah, that's a surprise. Arthur
We,
always
well,
had
we always
chihuahuas.
have. We've had both, so we've always had both.
You have, okay, all
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Arthur,
Art, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
We
And thank
love
you
it.
and Bernadette, because you've just
Yeah,
been a
please
big, big,
tell-
huge part of our lives.
And
And
tell Bernadette hello for us.
I
you
sure
know.
will. Yeah.
well, we'll turn it back over to you. So
Yeah,
please
you're-
show
you're
some
the
of your
star.
own.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Arthur, outside, when you were walking in from the outside, there was a big sign saying, I just caught one line of it in big letters. It said, don't even think about it.
Yeah.
What
So
is-
what that was there's a big sign outside that says, don't even think about asking for apricots. And
Oh.
what it is Ron Rodriguez. I don't know if you saw some of the folk art animals that were around the house. Those are done by Ron Rodriguez. His grandfather is Felipe Archuleta, the famous wood carver. And so he lived down the street from us, a couple of streets, and it's outside of our apricot tree. That big tree is an apricot tree, and he had an apricot tree in his backyard. And he would always come home and he'd find people in the backyard picking his apricots, and he would get so mad because he's a crazy kind of guy anyways. And he would find people back there and he'd have to yell at them, get out of my yard, and do all this kind of stuff. And so I said, well, if you don't want people in your yard, why don't you make a sign? So he made this sign that said, don't even ask for apricots, and put it on his wall outside. And when I saw that, I said, now that's true folk art. That is real folk art. And so I would keep telling him how I loved his sign. And so for my birthday one year, he framed it and gave it to me. And that was my gift. So I put it outside of the porch underneath our apricot tree. So a lot of times, like if we do have apricots, people are like, so I guess we can't ask for apricots. And I said, so I have to tell them the story that no, this is actually just a humorous folk art sign. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I feel like family is also very important. I mean, throughout your entire story that you shared with us is super important. Is your family involved in art? Are the children interested? Is that a passion you all share? I know that you work with your wife in collaborative pieces.
Yeah, so my wife she does, her jewelry, and we do the collaborative works. Both of our kids, my oldest son, Darian, he's more artistic. They're not doing art for themselves or full time. They're both in college now. He's studying architecture, so it is kind of on the art lines. So he is doing a lot of drawings and things like that in school. And our other son, Jeremiah, while he appreciates art, and the funny thing is he's not really, I don't know, he's not passionate about art, but when he does art, it's really cool stuff. Like it's very folky and funky looking, but it's very well done, and he does a good job. He has a really good eye at it, although he's not really interested in that. So he's going into geology or hydrology, so hydrologist. So that's what he's, or geologist.
Very cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Any more questions in the audience? Yeah, any more works nearby that you can show us as we finish out the program?
I don't have anything that's not too big unless I walk through the house again in the in the studio.
Got it. Any other questions, folks? Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your presence. And Arthur, it's been such an amazing time to get to know you, your background, and your process.
Oh, absolutely. This has been great.
Arthur, I forgot to say something very powerful happened on the day in late September that we were installing your triptych in this niche that we have in our museum. The first thing you see as you come up to the second main gallery floor. I was watching CBS News that morning, which I usually don't. And a doctor was on from a New York hospital. And he said in an average year that the hospital would have average 40 violent incidents from people coming in, whether they're high on PCP or they just lost a loved one and they're so angry that they take a punch at a doctor or a nurse, that kind of thing. But by September of this past year, the same New York hospital had 147 violent incidents against hospital staff, including rape. And just this torrent of hatred that we see kind of unleashed in so many ways, I know has been a heartache for us all. And that's really why this theme of healing and compassion and the lack thereof has been our focus for the whole year. And I just again wanted to thank you that your 3 contemporary saints, but done with so much love, let us bring up so many important issues and really have worked as great peacemakers as well. So with a whole heart, you had to drop everything and carve. I hope your wife is Bernadette like boycotting us. Was she angry? I bet you a lot.
No, I guess it was a good thing we were in a pandemic because there was nowhere we could go anyways. It was kind of, it was like, okay, we have. So I had my weekends free.
Well, we're getting a lot of thank yous for sharing your work, that your work has been a highlight at the museum. And so it's wonderful to hear your story. Please do share where we could follow you. If there's a website, I know that, thank you, Jasmine, put your Instagram up, but if you want to tell us about where we can find more about your work or, yeah.
If I could.
Oh, look. And I love this from Mary Beth Mullen. She just said some wonderful things. Bravo on your work. It was a wonderful example of compassion as a highlight. And then from Carolyn, is it Shati? She has a mom still in Baltimore, but you're living in Santa Fe. So she's going to hunt you down, I bet. And so thank you for joining us again. And everybody tonight, just a joy to share such a good human being with everybody and a wonderful artist.
Yeah, and Arthur just put his website in. It's www.artlopezart.com. So we'll be sure to share that when we hopefully post the video of this recording. So give you all that resource.
Yeah, it's just been great, working with you guys, and it's, I can't wait to get out to Baltimore and actually, give you a hug in person and see the show. So that'll be exciting. And, it's always been great to work with, everybody that I've actually come into contact with the Horowitzes and all of the different people that I've met along the way. It's just been such a great, experience that have become lifelong friends. And, I thank you guys that I don't know that are on. I can't see everybody. So if you are on there that I don't see you besides the Horowitzes, thank you guys so much for tuning in and taking your time to put your faith in me and my work. It's truly is appreciated.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. Thank you, organizers. It was great.
Thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you. Have a safe, wonderful night. I hope that you all get a wonderful rest for the new day, and hope to see you all at our next program. Be sure to keep an eye on AVAM's website, avam.org. Also for upcoming events, we're starting to reopen a little bit, so we are excited for things upcoming. Rebecca, thank you for your presence. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and yeah, this has been so much fun. Thank you all.
Yeah. And also, I do, if anyone is ever in the Santa Fe area, I do welcome people into our home and studio, and just give me a call. And if we have the time, I'd love to have you come over, and then you can actually see it and experience it in person. So we'd be happy to open our home and studio to you. So you guys are welcome if you are in Santa Fe area.
Thank you. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll call for sure. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye now.
Good night.
Night.
Good night all.
Night.
Night, Art.
Good night.